I never imagined that my 68th birthday would fall on the same. 4th of July, my son told me, I was no longer welcome in his home. But there I was, standing in the parking lot of Kerry Park in Seattle at 9:30 p.m., watching fireworks explode over Elliott Bay while my son Brian drove away in the Tesla I'd co-signed for 2 years ago. My duffel bag sat at my feet, the same olive green military surplus one I'd carried through 3 tours in Vietnam, now stuffed with whatever Linda had thrown together while Brian was telling me to leave. Dad, we need to have a serious conversation. Brian had pulled me aside that afternoon, away from the barbecue where his tech company colleagues were drinking craft beer and talking about stock options. His wife Linda stood nearby, her face unreadable behind designer sunglasses. I'd been living with them in their Ballard townhouse for 8 months, ever since my heart gave out last November and the hospital bills wiped out most of my savings. Of course, son. What's wrong? This isn't working anymore. You're not wrong, Dad. It's just the situation. Linda and I have been talking, and we think you need to consider alternative living arrangements. I felt my chest tighten, that old familiar pressure. Alternative living arrangements? Brian, I don't understand. Linda stepped forward, her voice sharp despite the smile she kept for the guests 20 feet away. James, you told that Vietnam story again. To my boss, he's a progressive, Dad. He doesn't want to hear about Agent Orange and body counts at a 4th of July party. It's embarrassing. I was answering his question about my service. He asked. That's not the point, Brian interrupted. The point is, you don't read the room. You don't understand that we're trying to build something here. Linda's up for a promotion. My team is watching how I handle my personal life, and having my 8-year-old father living in our spare room, taking up space we need for a home office. It's not the image we need right now, but I pay rent. I cover my medications. I helped you with the down payment on this place. Dad, that was 6 years ago, and honestly, we could have gotten the place without your help. The market was different then. Brian's voice had that edge I'd heard more and more lately, the one that reminded me of his mother during her worst days with the cancer, when the pain made her say things she didn't mean. So what do you want me to do? Linda handed me a brochure, Cascade Senior Living in Shoreline. They have openings. It's very nice. Lots of activities. That's $4,200 a month. My pension is $2,100. You have your savings, Dad. The savings I'd already lent them $35,000 from when Brian's startup failed 3 years ago. Money I'd never seen again. But I didn't say that. I just looked at my son, this man I'd raised alone after his mother died, and tried to find the boy who used to help me rebuild carburetors in our garage. When would you like me to leave? Tonight would be best. Linda said it like she was scheduling a dentist appointment. We have people here, and it'll be less awkward if you're just gone. Brian can drop you somewhere after the fireworks. You mentioned you had a doctor's appointment at the VA tomorrow anyway. The VA clinic was in Belltown, 15 miles from their place. And then what? There's an extended stay America off Aurora. Brian handed me $300 bills. That should cover a few nights while you figure things out. Text me when you're settled. 3 hours later, after the most humiliating car ride of my life, where Brian explained that I needed to be more self-aware about my impact on other people's careers, he pulled into Kerry Park. The place was packed with people watching the fireworks. Families spread out on blankets, couples holding hands. Why are we stopping here? I need to clear my head before I drive back. You can catch a bus from here. The 13 runs down Queen Anne Avenue. It's almost 10 p.m. on the 4th of July. The buses are running on holiday schedule. Then call an Uber. Dad, I can't do this right now. I have guests waiting. Text me tomorrow. And then he was gone, taillights disappearing down Highland Drive. I stood there with my duffel bag, $300 in cash, and maybe $800 in my checking account that needed to last until my next pension check in 2 weeks. I'd already given Brian $1,400 this month toward what he called rent, but what felt more like extortion. I found a bench near the viewpoint. The fireworks were still going, bursts of red and gold reflecting off the Space Needle. Families cheered. I put my head in my hands and tried not to think about the fact that I was 68 years old and essentially homeless on Independence Day. My son hadn't even said happy birthday. Some independence. Huh? I looked up. An elderly man, maybe late 70s, sat at the other end of the bench. He wore an expensive-looking peacoat despite the warm evening, and there was something about the way he held himself, straight-backed and dignified, that reminded me of the officers I'd served under. His hair was silver, neatly trimmed, and his hands, resting on a carved wooden cane, looked like they'd done real work once. "You could say that," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "I've been sitting here for 45 minutes. You've been here for 20. My driver got delayed in the holiday traffic, which almost never happens. But you look like you're waiting for something that already left." I laughed, bitter. That's one way to put it. Family troubles. Something about his gentle tone, or maybe just the fact that I'd been holding it in since that conversation with Brian, made the words spill out. "My son just dropped me off here and told me to catch a bus. I'm 68 years old and I have nowhere to go. It's my birthday." The old man was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "I'm sorry. That's a terrible thing to happen to anyone, especially on their birthday and the 4th of July. Double insult. I'm Harrison Sterling, James Carter." "James, I'm going to make you an unusual offer, and I need you to trust me for a few minutes. My driver should be here shortly. When he arrives, I'd like you to pretend you're my nephew, visiting from out of town. I'm giving you a ride back to your hotel. Can you do that?" I studied him. There was something about his bearing, the quality of his coat, the confidence in his voice, that made me want to trust him. But I'd been a Marine. I didn't trust easily. "Why?" "Because I believe I can help you, James Carter, but I need to verify something first. And because sometimes the universe puts people exactly where they need to be, at exactly the right time. I learned that in 40 years of business. Will you trust me?" What did I have to lose? My pride was already gone. "All right, excellent. And James, when we get to my home, just follow my lead. Don't act surprised by anything. Can you do that?" "I can manage that." 5 minutes later, a black Lincoln Navigator pulled up to the curb. A driver in a neat suit stepped out. "Mr. Sterling, my apologies for the delay. The 520 bridge was backed up from the fireworks traffic." "No problem, Robert. James here has been keeping me company. He's my nephew, visiting from Portland. We're ready to head home." Robert's eyes flickered to me, noted my duffel bag, but his training was impeccable. "Of course, sir. Good evening, James. Let me help you both." The interior of the vehicle was more luxurious than anything I'd experienced since leaving the service. Leather seats that felt like butter, climate control, a sound system playing soft jazz. Robert drove us north, through neighborhoods that got progressively more expensive, past Lake Union, through Laurelhurst. "Where are we going?" I whispered to Mr. Sterling. "Home," he said simply. "My home. Also yours, if you'll accept." 20 minutes later, we pulled through iron gates into a property overlooking Lake Washington that must have been worth $25 million if it was worth a penny. A sprawling mid-century modern house with walls of glass, perfectly landscaped grounds, a dock with a yacht I could see even in the dark. I tried not to react, but it was impossible. Mr. Sterling chuckled softly. "I know. It's a bit much. My wife Elizabeth used to say we could have bought a small island instead. She wasn't wrong. A woman in her 50s, professionally dressed even at this hour, met us at the door. "Mr. Sterling, welcome home. And you must be. This is James. Margaret, my nephew. He'll be staying with us for a while. Please prepare the guest suite in the East Wing. James has had a difficult day, and I think he'd appreciate some rest and a proper meal." "Of course, sir." "James, welcome. I'm Margaret, Mr. Sterling's house manager. Let me show you to your room." I followed her through a house that belonged in Architectural Digest. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the lake, a floating staircase, art that looked original. She led me to a suite larger than the apartment I'd lived in after I got back from Vietnam. A king-size bed, a bathroom with a walk-in shower and a soaking tub, a private balcony overlooking the water. "Dinner is at 8 in the dining room," Margaret said. "Unless you'd prefer a tray up here?" "The dining room is fine. Thank you." When she left, I sat on the bed and tried to process what had just happened. Who was Harrison Sterling? Why was he helping me? And how long could this possibly last? At 8 sharp, I made my way downstairs. Mr. Sterling was already seated at a dining table that could easily seat 12. He'd changed into comfortable slacks and a cashmere sweater. Without the pea coat, I could see he was thinner than I'd first thought, almost fragile. "James, sit, please. You probably have questions." "I don't even know where to start," I admitted, taking the seat to his right. "Start with dinner. Margaret makes an exceptional salmon, then we'll talk." We ate in silence for a few minutes. The food was incredible. I realized I hadn't eaten since that terrible barbecue at Brian's, and I'd been too upset to eat much then. "I'm dying," Mr. Sterling said suddenly. "Pancreatic cancer. 4 to 6 months, according to my oncologist. I've made my peace with it." I set down my fork. "I'm sorry." "Don't be. I've had 79 years, and most of them were good. But here's the thing, James. I built something in this life. Sterling Industries manufactures precision components for aerospace and medical devices. We employ 4,200 people across 5 states. I started it in my garage in 1972 with $3,000 and a patent for a better valve system. Now it's worth over $800 million, and I have no one to leave it to. No family? I had a wife, Elizabeth. Alzheimer's took her 12 years ago. Watching her, forget my name, forget our life together, that was harder than any business challenge I ever faced. We couldn't have children. Medical issue. On my end. We tried adoption, but back in the 80 seconds, with our work schedules, it never happened. So I threw myself into the business instead. Built an empire because I couldn't build a family. I'm truly sorry, Mr. Sterling. Harrison, please. And I'm telling you this because I've spent the last year, since my diagnosis, watching people. I go to the Space Needle sometimes, or Pike Place Market, or parks like the one we met at tonight. I watch families, parents with children, adult children visiting elderly parents. And I've learned something. Do you know what I see most often, James? I shook my head. Obligation pretending to be love. Children who visit their dying parents because they're supposed to, because they're waiting for an inheritance, because society expects it. But you can always tell the real thing from the fake. Real love doesn't check its watch. Real love doesn't calculate the value of time spent. Real love doesn't drop someone at a park on their birthday and drive away. Why are you telling me this? Because tonight, sitting on that bench, I heard something in your voice that broke my heart. A good man who served his country, who raised his son alone, I'm guessing, given the way you talk about him, who gave everything, only to be discarded when he was no longer useful. And I thought about Elizabeth, about how I'd give anything, everything, for one more day when she knew who I was. And your son threw you away like garbage, on your birthday, on Independence Day. It's complicated. No, James, it's not. Love is never complicated. Selfishness sometimes disguises itself as complexity, but at its core, what happened to you tonight was simple. Your son chose his image, his convenience, over his father's dignity. On your birthday, I felt tears building. I don't know what you want from me. I want to make you an offer. Stay here. Live in this house as my guest. In exchange, I'd like your company. Someone to talk to. Someone to share meals with. Someone who understands what it's like to build something and wonder if it mattered. I don't have much time left, James. I don't want to spend it alone in this museum, and I think you could use a place to land while you figure out your next chapter. I can't accept charity, Harrison. It's not charity. It's a job. I'm writing my memoirs, or trying to. Elizabeth always said I should document the evolution of American manufacturing, what I've witnessed, what I've learned. I've been stalling because I don't want to do it alone. You have an engineering background, right? I can tell from the way you hold yourself, the way you observe things. Mechanical engineering, University of Washington, class of 77. But I never finished. Got drafted, then when I came back, I had a family to support. Perfect. You'll help me write. We'll call you my research assistant and biographer if that helps your pride. Salary is $60,000 a year, plus room and board. Harrison, that's too much. It's what the work is worth. And James, I literally own companies. I can afford to pay you properly. Why me? You don't know anything about me. Harrison smiled. I know you sat on a bench in the dark on the 4th of July rather than beg your son for help. I know you thanked Robert twice during a 20-minute drive. I know you didn't gawk at this house or ask me how much anything cost. I know that when Margaret offered you dinner in your room, the easy option after the day you've had, you came down here instead because you understood it would matter to me. That tells me everything I need to know. Plus, you're a veteran. Marines, if I'm reading those tattoos right, I respect that. I look down at my forearms, the faded eagle, globe, and anchor visible below my shirt sleeves. Force recon, 3 tours. Then you understand discipline, loyalty, and seeing things through. That's all I need. So what do you say, James? Fair trade? Your company for my hospitality? I wiped my eyes, not caring any more about pride. Fair trade. Good. Now finish your salmon. Tomorrow, Margaret will take you shopping for some proper clothes, whatever you need. Consider it part of your employment package. That night, lying in the most comfortable bed I'd experienced in decades, I called Brian. He answered on the 4th ring. Hey, Dad, get situated somewhere? Yes. I'm staying with a friend for now. Oh, good. Listen, about earlier, I was stressed. Linda had her boss there, and you know how she gets about impressions. It's fine, Brian. My voice was cold. I understand perfectly. Great. Well, keep in touch, okay? And happy birthday, by the way. Sorry, I forgot earlier. Thank you. Goodbye, Brian. I hung up before he could respond and turned off my phone. The next 4 months were unlike anything I'd experienced since before Elizabeth died. Harrison told me over breakfast the next morning. That was when he started using the past tense, when I knew he was serious about the memoirs. We fell into a routine. Breakfast at 7, where Harrison would quiz me about my engineering background, about changes I'd seen in manufacturing, in materials science. He was writing a chapter about American industrial decline and wanted perspective from someone who'd worked on factory floors, who'd seen jobs disappear overseas. Mid-morning, we'd work on his memoirs in his study, a room lined with bookshelves and windows overlooking the lake. Tell me about starting the company again, I'd say, and Harrison would light up, remembering the early days, the risks, the satisfaction of solving problems with precision instead of guesswork. Afternoons, if Harrison felt strong enough, we'd take his boat out on Lake Washington. He'd grown up sailing on Puget Sound, and being on the water seemed to ease the pain that the cancer medications couldn't touch. You know what I miss most about Elizabeth? He asked one August afternoon as we drifted near Madison Park. Her questions, she asked the best questions, made me think deeper about why I was building things, not just how. You do that too, James. You ask why. I learned it in the Corps. Understanding the why keeps you alive. We'd have dinner together every evening. Sometimes Margaret would join us, and I learned she'd been with Harrison for 20 years, since just after Elizabeth's diagnosis. She treated him like family, and she accepted me with a warmth that made me ashamed of how easily I'd let Brian push me around. He's different with you here, she told me one morning, while we worked together in the garden. Harrison had always loved roses, but he'd stopped tending them after Elizabeth died. Now we were trying to bring them back. He has purpose again. Looks forward to waking up. He's been good for me too, I admitted. Better than good. Brian called 3 times in those 4 months. Short, awkward conversations where he asked if I'd found an apartment yet, if I needed anything, if I was okay. I told him I was fine, staying with a friend, working on a project. I didn't mention Harrison. Something held me back. Maybe I wasn't ready to share this part of my life with the son who'd rejected me. Maybe I was afraid he'd ruin it somehow. Then, in early November, everything changed. I was in the study with Harrison, reviewing a chapter about the 2008 financial crisis and how Sterling Industries had survived when many competitors hadn't. When Robert knocked on the door, "Mr. Sterling, you have visitors. Your attorney, Mr. Walsh, and 2 people claiming to be Mr. Carter's family." My blood ran cold. "What?" Harrison's face remained calm. "Show them to the living room, Robert. James and I will be there shortly." "Harrison, I don't understand. How would Brian find you here, James? I don't know. I never told him anything specific, just that I was staying with a friend. The internet is powerful, and this house is rather distinctive. Someone with resources could find it. The question is, what does he want? We found out quickly. Brian and Linda stood in the living room, both dressed like they were heading to a business meeting. Brian's eyes widened when he took in the house, the view, the art. Dad, there you are. We've been trying to reach you. Your phone's been going to voicemail. I return calls when I want to talk. All 3 of them in 4 months. Well, we're here now. Who's your friend? Harrison stepped forward, and I saw Brian really notice him for the first time. The expensive clothing, the bearing, the house surrounding us. I'm Harrison Sterling. James has been staying with me. And you are? Brian Carter, James's son. This is my wife, Linda. Brian's voice had taken on that oily quality I remembered from when he wanted something. Mr. Sterling, it's wonderful that you've been helping my father, but we think it's time Dad came home. We've talked it over, and we realize we were too hasty. We want him back. How convenient, Harrison said dryly. And what precipitated this change of heart? Linda stepped forward, her smile practiced. We missed him. We realize families should be together, especially at the holidays. Thanksgiving is coming up. I see. James, what do you think? Every eye turned to me. Brian looked expectant, confident even. Linda's smile didn't reach her eyes. Harrison stood quietly, his face neutral, but I could sense he was listening intently. I think, I said slowly, that you told me I was embarrassing you, that I was taking up space you needed, that I didn't understand how to not impact your careers. And I think you left me at Cary Park on my birthday with $300 and told me to catch a bus. Brian's face flushed. Dad, that's not fair. We were stressed. It was a complicated situation. How did you find this address, Brian? He hesitated. I was worried when you wouldn't tell me where you were staying. So I asked around, checked social media. One of Linda's colleagues saw you at the marina with Mr. Sterling. I did some research and realized who he was. And when you found out it was Harrison Sterling's estate, what did you think? Brian and Linda exchanged glances. Finally, Linda spoke, and I heard the calculation in her voice. We think it's inappropriate for James to be living off a stranger's charity when he has family who can care for him. Living off charity? Harrison's voice hardened. James is my biographer and research assistant. He earns his salary. Doing what? Keeping an old man company? Linda's mask was slipping. Come on. We're concerned about elder exploitation here. Both of you. Both of us? Harrison is 79 years old with a terminal diagnosis. You're 68 and just had a heart attack. This situation has exploitation written all over it, and we're worried about both of you. I felt my anger rising, clean and hot. That's rich, coming from the woman who took my pension check for 18 months and hasn't asked once if I needed money for my medications. We didn't take it, Brian protested. You wanted to contribute to the household. You accepted. When's the last time you asked if I needed anything? Called just to talk, not to see if I'd found an apartment? You want to know what exploitation looks like, Brian? Look in a mirror. Harrison held up a hand. I think this conversation has run its course. Brian, Linda, I'm going to ask you to leave. James is welcome here, as long as he chooses to stay. If he wishes to contact you, he will. You can't keep him here against his will, Linda said. I'm not keeping anyone anywhere. James is a grown man, a veteran who served his country, who raised a son alone. He can make his own choices. Robert will show you out. After they left, I sank into one of the leather chairs. I'm sorry, Harrison. I never meant to bring drama into your home. Don't apologize. That was actually rather enlightening. He sat across from me. James, I want to tell you something. I'm changing my will. I wanted you to hear it from me first, before the lawyers explain everything. I stared at him. Harrison, you don't need to do anything because of this. This isn't because of today. I've been planning this for 6 weeks, since August. I'm leaving the majority of my estate to you. What? No. Harrison, you can't. There must be someone else. Employees, charities, something. There are provisions for key employees, generous ones. There are donations to engineering scholarships, medical research, veterans programs. But the house, the controlling stake in Sterling Industries, about 60% of my liquid assets, that's all going to you. Roughly $340 million in total value. I couldn't speak. I've thought about this carefully, James. I've talked to my attorneys, my board, my financial advisors. They all think I'm crazy. But here's what I know. I built this company with precision, with integrity, with the belief that we were making things that mattered. Medical devices that save lives, aerospace components that keep people safe. I don't want it gutted for parts by venture capitalists or run into the ground by someone who only sees profit margins. I need someone who understands what I built and why. Someone with integrity. Harrison, we've known each other 4 months. I knew Elizabeth for 3 weeks before I proposed. When you know, you know. But this isn't a marriage proposal, James. It's a trust. I'm trusting you to be a good steward, to make sure the company continues to serve people, not just shareholders, to ensure the foundation continues to support innovation and education, to live in this house and make it a home again instead of a museum. Can you do that? I don't know anything about running companies. That's why I have excellent executives. The CEO, Karen Wu, has been with Sterling for 20 years. She knows the business inside and out. You don't need to run it day to day. You just need to make sure it runs with purpose, with heart. Can you do that? I thought about Brian, about how quickly he'd come back when he thought there might be money involved, about how I'd rather have nothing in Harrison's respect than everything in Brian's false affection. Yes, I said. If you trust me, I won't let you down. I know you won't. Now, we're meeting with my attorney tomorrow. We'll make it official. And James, thank you. For what? For being here. For making my last months mean something. For reminding me that family isn't always blood. Sometimes it's choice. Sometimes it's finding someone on a bench on the 4th of July who needs exactly what you need, connection. Harrison passed away on a Thursday morning in late November, 2 days before Thanksgiving. I was reading to him from Moby Dick, his favorite book. He smiled, squeezed my hand, said, "Thank you, son," and closed his eyes. Just like that. The funeral was massive. Business leaders, politicians, engineers, employees who'd worked for him for decades, they all came to pay respects to Harrison Sterling, industrial pioneer and philanthropist. Brian and Linda came too, sitting in the back, their faces carefully neutral. The will reading was held 3 days later at the offices of Walsh, Harrison, and Associates. Brian and Linda arrived early, dressed formally. I saw Brian glancing around the conference room at the mahogany table, the Seattle skyline visible through the windows. Harrison's attorney, David Walsh, was a distinguished man in his 60s who'd worked with Harrison for 30 years. He explained the various bequests: generous donations to the University of Washington's Engineering School, funding for a veterans rehabilitation center, a trust for Margaret that would keep her comfortable for life, stock options and bonuses for key employees. And now we come to the primary estate, David said, looking at me over his reading glasses. The house overlooking Lake Washington, valued at $28 million. The controlling interest in Sterling Industries, 60% of outstanding shares. The remaining investment portfolio valued at approximately $180 million. Mr. Sterling has bequeathed these to James Edward Carter to be held in trust with specific stipulations regarding the management and direction of Sterling Industries. The silence was deafening. Then Brian exploded. What? That's impossible. He knew my father for what? 4 months? This is textbook undue influence. We're contesting this. You're welcome to try, David said calmly, but I should inform you that Mr. Sterling anticipated this reaction. He left extensive documentation explaining his decision, including daily journal entries, video recordings, and testimony from multiple witnesses, including myself, regarding his mental competency and his relationship with James. He also left a letter to be read aloud if anyone contested the will. Would you like me to read it? Yes, Linda said, her face pale. We absolutely would. David pulled out an envelope and began to read in Harrison's voice, as if he were still in the room. To whoever is contesting this will, but probably to Brian Carter specifically, I'm dead, so I can speak freely. James Carter is the finest man I've met in the last 20 years of my life. He asked for nothing, expected nothing, gave everything, his time, his intelligence, his kindness, without calculation or agenda. He made my final months joyful instead of lonely. He listened to my stories. He laughed at my jokes. He worked beside me in the garden even though his back hurt. He held my hand when the pain was bad and never once complained about his own struggles. He earned everything I'm giving him through simple human decency. If you're contesting this, it's because you want what he has. You think he stole it from you. But here's the truth, you can't steal what was never yours. Blood relation doesn't entitle you to anything except the obligation to treat that blood relation with love and respect. Brian Carter kicked his father out on his birthday, left him at a park on the 4th of July with $300. Didn't check on him for months until he discovered his father might be connected to wealth. That's not family, that's exploitation. And I'll be damned if I reward it from beyond the grave. James, if you're hearing this, it means my will is being contested. Don't let them bully you. This is yours. You earned it through character, through being there, through reminding a dying old man that kindness still exists in this world. Use it well. Keep Sterling Industries innovative and ethical. Take care of the employees. Fund education for kids who want to build things. And maybe, if you're feeling generous, visit my grave sometimes and tell me how you're doing. Tell me if you brought those roses back. To everyone else, my decision is final. James Carter is my chosen heir. If you have a problem with that, I'll be happy to discuss it in the afterlife. I imagine I'll have time. With all my respect and affection, Harrison Sterling. The letter ended. David set it down and looked at Brian and Linda. Do you still wish to contest? Brian's face had gone through several shades of red during the reading. Now he just looked defeated, smaller somehow. No, he whispered. No contest. They left without speaking to me. I stayed in that office for another 2 hours while David explained my responsibilities. The board meetings, the strategic decisions I'd need to make, the foundation work, the scholarship programs Harrison had established. It's a lot, David said finally. Harrison knew that, but he also knew you'd grow into it. And James, he was right about you. I've been his attorney for 3 decades. I've never heard him speak about anyone the way he spoke about you in his final months. You gave him peace. That's worth more than all the money in that will. 5 months later, I stood in Harrison's study, my study now, looking out at the lake. Spring was coming. The roses Margaret and I had worked on were starting to bloom. I'd spent the winter learning the business, meeting with Karen Wu and the executive team, understanding what Harrison had built. It was good work, meaningful work. Margaret knocked and entered with coffee. You have a visitor, she said quietly. Brian is at the gate. He's asking to speak with you. I hadn't heard from my son since the will reading. Part of me wanted to send him away, but Harrison's voice echoed in my head. Use it well. Make things better. Let him in. Show him to the living room. Brian looked different, thinner, older. There were circles under his eyes. He stood awkwardly among Harrison's furniture, hands in his pockets. Dad, he said, thank you for seeing me. What do you want, Brian? To apologize. Not because I want anything. I know I have no right to ask for anything ever again. I need you to know that I'm sorry. What changed? Everything. He sat down heavily. After the will reading, Linda filed for divorce. Turns out she'd been having an affair with her boss for 6 months. The one I was trying to impress at that 4th of July party. The divorce got ugly. She took half of everything. And during the proceedings, it came out that I'd been gambling. Online poker, sports betting. I'd lost almost $200,000 over 2 years. That's why I needed you out of the house. We needed the rent money. We needed that spare room to Airbnb. I stared at him. Brian, why didn't you tell me? Because I was ashamed. Because I'm my father's son, and you taught me to be self-reliant, to handle my own problems. But I handled it badly. I hurt you. I threw away the one person who would have helped me without judgment. What are you doing now? I'm in therapy. Both kinds. Mental health and gamblers. Anonymous. I lost the house. I'm living in a one-bedroom in Fremont. Lost my job when the divorce got messy. But I'm rebuilding. Slowly. And I wanted you to know that I understand what I did to you. I understand what I lost. Not the money. I lost my father. I studied him, looking for manipulation, for angles. Found only exhaustion and shame, and something that looked like genuine remorse. I can't forget what you did, I said finally. But maybe, in time, I can forgive it. Harrison taught me something in the months I knew him. He taught me that family is about choice, not obligation. You chose to walk away from me. That was your choice. Now I'm choosing to give you a chance. One chance to earn your way back into my life. Not as my son who thinks he deserves anything, but as a man who understands what he did wrong and wants to make it right. How do I do that? Start by being honest. About the gambling, about why you really pushed me out. Then maybe we have lunch next week. One meal, one honest conversation. No promises, no guarantees. Just the chance to try again. Can you do that? Brian nodded, tears streaming down his face. I can do that. Thank you, Dad. Thank you. After he left, I went back to Harrison's study, to our study, and looked at the photo Margaret had framed for me. Harrison and me on his boat last summer, both of us sunburned and happy, holding up a salmon we'd caught. It wasn't a big fish, but we'd been proud of it anyway. I picked up the phone and called Karen Wu. We had a board meeting next week, and I wanted to discuss expanding Sterling Industries' apprenticeship program. Harrison had always believed in training the next generation of engineers, of makers, of people who built things that mattered. It was time to make that vision bigger. As I worked, I thought about that night on the bench at Cary Park, about how lost and alone I'd felt, about how a stranger had seen something in me that my own son couldn't, had seen that I had value beyond what I could provide, that I deserved dignity and respect and a chance to matter. Harrison had given me all that, and in return, I'd given him what he wanted most, not to die alone, to matter to someone in his final days, to know that what he'd built would continue with purpose. It was, I realized, the fairest trade two people could make, and I'd spend the rest of my life making sure I held up my end of the bargain. Because that's what family does. Real family. The kind you choose and the kind that chooses you. The kind you find on a bench on the 4th of July when you're both looking for the same thing. Connection, purpose, someone to share the fireworks with. Someone to remind you that independence doesn't mean being alone. It means being free to choose the people who matter and to matter to them in return.